Good evening, everybody. Really nice to have you here this evening for a very, very special evening. I had a quick chat with David just as I arrived, and he informed me that something which I did not know, which is that 39 years ago, I taught his wife in Israel, which is quite remarkable, and how the cycle turns, and how everything is interweaved. And given enough time, everyone will meet everybody, and everything will fit into place, which is really, really comforting. This is part of a 4-part series on Kabbalah and its capacity to explain various phenomena of life. Last week we spoke about something more psychologically oriented and the nature of guilt, comparing Freud, Jung and the Alter Rebbe. Today our exploration goes in a very different direction. We're going to look at some of the approach that a divine mind has in terms of the process of creation of the world. We can't enter into the mind of God, as the Rambam enunciates so clearly, but nevertheless our capacity to peer into what we can see and we can understand gives us just the merest hint of some of the purpose and certainly some of the beauty. Some souls are reincarnated for very specific purposes, others for general purposes. But sometimes a soul is reincarnated with a sensitivity that is beyond the norm, to be able to recognize some of the divine patterning that takes place within the cosmos and is reflected in nature itself. In the simplest things, petals, leaves, root structure, the interplay between insects and the natural vegetation. Sometimes the way that human beings use, and God forbid, misuse nature itself. But it takes someone whose soul is sensitive enough to become an artist and to perceive the depth and beauty where you and I might look at it from the outside and not see how the hand of God shapes it. And one such individual is David Friedman, who hails originally from the United States, has made his home in Israel and in Tzfat for many, many years, and is very well known internationally for allowing each one of us to have our eyes open in that respect. But I'm going to leave the introduction for David to Shai Yisrael from the JNF here. And it's because of the JNF and their very good judgment in bringing David here that provides us with this opportunity. And I want to thank at the outset the JNF for making David available to us and to share with us, which I'm sure is going to be a fantastic insight into some arenas of what our eyes see but don't register. One more little Kabbalistic teaching. The physical eye is mere machinery. It's physiology. It's only the experience of the neshama flowing through the physical machinery that provides us with the gift of sight. The eye doesn't see, because a dead person has an eye but doesn't see. But our capacity to, if you will, figuratively open our eyes to the inner beauties of the world, sometimes we need a teacher to guide us in that respect. And I'm hoping tonight will be exactly that particular phenomenon. I'm going to turn the mic over to Shai, and once again publicly thank him, and I look forward to his introduction of our special guest, David Friedman.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Laibl and members of the community. Today, I'm excited to introduce our guest speaker, world-renowned artist and teacher of Kabbalah, David Friedman. JNF is honored to have brought him to Melbourne to present his work to our community. Born in Denver, Colorado, David was raised in a modern Orthodox family. After a year at the Rhode Island School of Design, David left to pursue the study of Torah and Jewish mysticism, which he began with the late Rabbi Twerksky. He immigrated to Israel in 1977 at the age of 20. David spent 2 years studying Torah in Jerusalem, where he met his wife, Miriam. Together they moved to Tzfat in 1979. There, David immersed himself in the study of the Talmud and other classic texts of Judaism, as well as Kabbalah, continuing to create art at night. As early as 1980, David began producing artwork based on Torah concepts in an attempt to integrate Torah and art. After beating cancer in 1987, David started practicing Jewish meditation, yoga, and healthy eating, shifting his primary focus to the study of Kabbalah. David's artwork translates Kabbalistic concepts into graphic shapes and colors based mostly on the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. He has exhibited in North America and Israel, and his work can be found in many art collections around the world. David's art simplifies and clarifies profound Kabbalistic ideas. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Please give a warm welcome to David Friedman.
Okay, it's wonderful to be here. It's my first time in Australia. I have this PowerPoint presentation that I made, and then I have another one that just is my art. And I think we'll go through this, and then we can just do like a slideshow of just give you a sense of more of my art. Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, it's about God's creation, but also it's a window for us to be creative as well. And all creation starts from one point. So if you look up there, see the top left, a point is 1 point, but it has 0 dimensions. And then from 1 point, if it goes in a direction, it forms a line. 2 points form a line. A line has 1 dimension. And then to make 2-dimensional, which is flat, there are 3 primary shapes that you could make. And it's by doing very simple manipulations of that line. If you rotate it, you have a circle. And then if you find the point that's immediately between, the vortex between the 2 points of the line, then by connecting them, you have a triangle. And then if you just like raise the line up, then you have a square. And these are the 3 primary shapes. Now, if you look over here, by doing those same functions, you can shift it from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. If you rotate the circle, you get a sphere. If you find the center point between the 3 points of a triangle, then you get a tetrahedron. And then if you raise up the square, you get a cube. So very simple processes. Now a tetrahedron is the most simple three-dimensional solid. And just by adding one more point, it takes you to 3 dimensions. So 1 point, 0 dimensions, 2 points, 1 dimension, 3 points, the triangle, 2 dimensions, and then 4 points will take you to 3 dimensions. Okay, here's a quote that I like a lot from Galileo. Everybody can read that the great book, the universe, can only be understood if you learn the language. And the language is a mathematical language, triangles, circles, and other geometric figures. And it's interesting that's not just in the Jewish world of the Kabbalah, but in science as well. This is the language of the universe. Okay, in Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, the 22 Hebrew letters are divided into 3 groups. If you look at the one on the left, in the triangle at the top are the 3 mother letters. And a little hard to see, but the key is the primary colors. So does everybody see the three Hebrew letters there? In the yellow is the Aleph. And then in the blue is the Mem. Does everybody see it? Yeah, it's tilted to the side. It's in the blue. Okay, see, here's the base of the Mem. Here's the Mem. It's upside down. And then here's the Shin in the red. It's a little hard to see, but it's there. Those are the 3 mother letters. They're primary. In the circle here are the 7 double letters. Beit, Gimel, Daled, Kaf, Pei, Resh, and then Taf. Here's the Beit in the blue, the Daled, here's the Gimel. They're double letters because they come with the Dagesh or without a Dagesh. But also, 3 doubled is 6. And then the 7th is the one in the middle. Now, if you double 6, then you get 12. And these are the 12 simple letters. Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Lamed, Nun, Samach, Ayin, Tzadik, Kuf. 3, 7, and 12. And these are numbers that appear in many, many things. They're like the building blocks of creation. I'm going to go back here. Here again are the 3 mother letters. Does everybody see the sheen here in the lighter red? And then the Aleph. And then the Mem. Okay, why are they mother letters? They're primary because they're primary sounds. In Sefer Yetzirah, it says that the shin is a hissing sound. So if you make the sound of shin, everybody go shh. Notice how you have to open your lips to make that sound. It's an outward hissing sound. It's the opposite sound of the mem. Sound of mem is everybody do that. It's the opposite, lips closed. It's an inward sound. Sh is an outward sound. Now the shin is open upward because it stands for fire. In Hebrew, esh. And fire goes up. In Sefer Yetzirah, it represents, in space, the heavens. And in time, the hot season, the summer. In us, it's the head, firing of neurons. And the mem is open downward because it stands for water, mayim. And water flows down. In the universe, it represents the earth, which is mostly covered by water. In time, it's the cold season, winter. And in us, it's the lower body. And so those are the opposites, the physical in us and the spiritual in us. And then the aleph is the connection between the two. It's always the dialectic of the two opposites, the hot and the cold, spiritual and physical. And aleph is silent. It stands for air. In Hebrew, avir. And the word for air in Hebrew and the word for light are almost identical. So I connected the three mother letters to the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. And the Hebrew letters are also numbers, and that's called gematria. And the most simple gematria reduces large numbers to single digits. Shin is the 21st Hebrew letter. But 2 plus 1 is 3. And a triangle, the shin is shaped like a triangle, which has 3 sides. Mem, the final mem, the mem sophit, is like a rectangle or a square. It's the 13th Hebrew letter. But 1 plus 3 is 4. And a rectangle has 4 sides. So primary sounds, the sh, the m, primary colors, the red and the blue, primary shapes, triangle and rectangle, 3 and 4. And aleph being the 1, I like to make the aleph as a circle. Because when we say Hashem Echad, that the name or God is one, we mean one in the sense of infinite. So see how Shem, Shin Mem is Shem, and then Aleph is the first letter, 1. How many sides does a circle have? Any other opinions? Okay, I heard 4 different answers, and I usually hear that with groups. Some people say 0 sides, so there's a 0. Some people say 1 continuous side. Here's the numeral 1. Those who say 2, inside and outside, well, the shape of the aleph is like a breath. In Hebrew, the letters are made up of smaller Hebrew letters. And this aleph is made up of 2 yuds and a vav. Vav is the letter that connects. It means and, because air, we breathe air. Breath goes out and in. And the breath is the connection between the spiritual and the physical. So the out and the in is the 2. But mathematicians and Kabbalists like the answer infinite. A circle has an infinite number of sides. In calculus, an infinite number of tangents. In arithmetic, there's an infinite number of fractions between 0 and 1. And then in geometry, the relationship between the circumference of a circle and its diameter is pi, which goes to infinity. But the first 3 digits of pi, 3, 1, 4. So interesting connection between gematria and geometry. Okay, remember the numbers, the 3 mother letters, and then 7 double letters, and then 12 simple letters. From something very simple, you can get to something more complicated. But these are 3 of the 5 Pythagorean solids. The tetrahedron, the tetrahedron is its faces that are all triangles. The other 2 Pythagorean solids are also faces with triangles. They just are more complex. The cube is square, and then the dodecahedron has pentagons. But see how 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 12? From the 3 plus 4 you get to 7, and then from 5 you get to 12. So it's a very simple progression that you find in the universe. Also in music, these numbers, you find them in music as well. And the 5, the pentagon, some of the most simple scales in music are pentatonic scales that are based on 5. Here's a piece of mine that uses both what we call the Jewish star, the 6-pointed star. But you see how I also have the 5-pointed star, the pentagram that's embedded in a pentagon. Sometimes we don't relate so much to the 5-pointed star in Judaism because we like the 6-pointed star. But aren't there a lot of 5s in Judaism as well? The 5 books of the Torah, the Chumash, which is Chamesh, which is 5. I call this geometric play with 5s and 6s. Now, music also starts with very simple things. And see how this one over here, it's the 1, like an open string. And then if you divide a string into half, that's the octave, the first harmonic. And the octave in a regular scale is the 8th note, the one that comes after 7, goes back to the 1. And this is also the cycle that we see in nature, how we count time. 7 days of the week, and then the 8th goes to the next cycle. In music as well. Now, if you divide a string, a stretched string, into 3 equal parts, that's the second overtone or harmonic. It's the perfect 5th. And the nature of harmony, like if you try and sing harmony in a nigun or something, if you go up an octave or down an octave, it sounds really good. because it's really the same note, just higher or lower. But if you go up a fifth and sing it together with somebody who's singing the first note, that also sounds really good. And it sounds almost as good as the octave. And then the next one that sounds really good is if you divide a string into 4 equal parts. And that's the perfect fourth. So most music is based on 3. The 1, the 4, and the 5. As this was something that Pythagoras, the Pythagoreans were also mystics, and they had this love of numbers, and he discovered this simple ratio. So the tonic is the first, and then the fifth and the fourth. And a simple chord is it's just a question of counting. So C, D, E, F, G. So there's a ratio of 1, 3, 5. That's a simple chord. And then if C is 1, then F is the 4 up from there, C, D, E, F. And then F, G, A, B, C. Same thing, 1, 3, 5. And then from the fifth from C, same thing. But from those 3, you generate all of the 7 notes of the scale, and it goes back to the 8th, which is the first. Everybody sees that? It's very simple, and it goes back to this Sefer Yetzirah. Now visually, well, this one is interesting for musicians. Are there musicians here? I like out here, like if you're playing a song and you're on that first chord, if you go to the 5th or to the 4th, then those are like very stable. You can hang out there for a while. But they vocally, you want to go back to the tonic. You can't stay there for very long. They're just like lead-in notes. But there's this, I like how in this book they showed it as like if the 1 is the earth, then the 4 is like the moon, which is closest to us, and then the 5th is like the sun. Now, geometric art, this is a relationship I like to use a lot in my art, which is it's 6 around the 1, and also the days of the week are associated with the 7 planets. That's also from Sefer Yetzirah. And this shows how the names of the days of the weeks in English come from the planets. Here's a couple examples of how I use that relationship. See how it's 6 around 1? And 2 variations of the same theme. Do you notice the Star of David is there in the space between the 7 circles? You could do that with coins as well. Put 6 coins touching each other around the 7th in the middle, and you get the Star of David in the space in between. Also notice how geometric art is always fractal. And fractals is a form that appears in many things in nature. How like natural forms are self-similar on different scales. Common example of that is if you take like a head of cauliflower and you look at its shape and then you break off one branch, it has that same shape. Then you break off a smaller branch, it's like it stays that same image but on different scales. So see how geometric art is like that? The macro design, 6 around 1. It's even in the 1, it repeats again. If I go back to, you see how also that's here. If here's the pentagon, and then if you make a star using those points, so inside of it is another pentagon, and you can very easily use those points to make another and then another. And it shows that there's something infinite in fractals, which comes from the word fractions. Like I said, there's an infinite amount of fractions between 0 and 1. So let's start with this one. This one I call the Holy Palace. And it's based on those numbers that are associated with Sefer Yetzirah. And I use it to show how color also is the same pattern. So do you see the Star of David in this one? So I have one triangle with the primary colors. These symbols here,
yes, I just want to know.
these are the symbols of the mazalot, the signs of the zodiac.
Oh, okay. Oh, those are the symbols for the sign. Okay.
Yeah, and 12 is one of these numbers that it's divisible by 6, 6 divided by 2, but also 3 or 4. And 3 and 4, well, I'll show you. If you divide 12 by 4, so you get the seasons, the spring, the summer, the autumn, and the winter. And then every season has 3 months. So always the first month of every season is the cardinal sign, because it starts there at the cardinal points, and then the fixed one is the middle of every season, and then the mutable is at the end of a season where it's about to change into the next season. And then there's, if you take the fire, earth, air, water, there are 4 of those. Right, so 4 divided by 3, it's different than 3 divided by 4.
Can I ask you a question? How much is Tzfat the reason that you produce this art and this interface with music and mathematics? How much of it is the fact that you live in Tzfat? Because you told us that the Kabbalah Shabbat is written by people from Tzfat.
I'm inspired a lot by living in Tzfat, because it has this rich history of Kabbalah. How many of you have been in Tzfat? How many of you have met me in Tzfat? A few of you. It's a very spiritual town, and if you do Shabbat in Tzfat, it's incredible. Also, the color of the sky It's like when they talk about how blue is a mystical color, the blue of the Tzfat. When you see the blue sky and Tzfat and twilight, then you know what that. So I think it had a big impact on my life and my work. Any other questions?
Do you ever get artistic blocks? Because I've decided a month ago I want to start painting, and the canvas is sitting on the easel. Nothing's on it.
I do, but I like to keep Shabbat, right? So Shabbat at first, not doing art or music on Shabbat was very difficult. But then I take it as an opportunity to let things gestate. And then I think that's also not doing is also part of the creative process. So when I have those blocks, I don't try and like push it. I sort of accept it. But if how much more time do we have? Do we have a few more minutes? I wasn't watching.
We need to finish in about 20 minutes. We need to be finished.
Okay, because I also have another PowerPoint that's just my art, and we can go through that, and I can show you that sometimes the ones that I showed you here are ones that are based on these numbers and more conceptual and symbolic. I also do art that's just more abstract and free. So when I don't have an idea, I'll just start something and see where it takes me. So should I put the other one up? So this is some different variations on themes that I've done. So light. Do you see the letter Aleph here? Here's the diagonal. And then here's, so air in Hebrew, avir, and light, or, they both start with aleph. And here I was thinking of light scientifically as waves and particles. But many people tell me it reminds them of Aboriginal art. And this one here is sort of vibrational. Doesn't it like vibrate when you look at it? So these are more abstract. They just started from just playing with paint, but they sort of were going to like space-like themes. And they're just like many different layers of acrylic paint. This one, I call it Cosmic Event. I've had astrophysicists come into my gallery and they tell me that looks like what the Milky Way galaxy would look like if photographed from the side. And I said, it's just from my imagination. And he said, no, this is the Magellan cluster. I'm like, it's just from my imagination. This I call supernova. And these are more of that kind of feeling of space. Sefer Yetzirah is attributed to Avraham. And God told him, go out and look at the stars, see if you can count them. But today we know that it's not just stars, it's galaxies, trillions of galaxies with billions of stars. And I think that really expands our notions of time and space.
How large are they?
How large are these?
No, how large are the canvases?
They're not very large. They're about so big. So I'm fascinated with like energy and This one I call quantum uncertainty. So it's sort of like using dots. And then sometimes I do these, and they're basically abstract, but doesn't remind you of cells. Cells in life. This one I call microcosmic. It's like fractals again, but life inside of life inside of life. And this also has a little bit aboriginal feeling. When I speak to groups, sometimes I ask people, how many trees are represented here? What do you say? Okay, there's 18 complete trees. I call it the wheel of life. But isn't it sort of suggestive that there's even smaller trees inside there, and also that these are also just partial larger trees? But can't it also be just one tree, and you're seeing like the cross section of the trunk of the tree? And this one I call transcending and including. You saw these before. And here the symbol of the 10 Sefirot is called the Tree of Life. I've done many different versions of them. But this one it's a real tree, an ancient tree outside of Tzfat that I photographed and I did that painting of. These are other examples of the tree of life. This one I call cosmic DNA. And again, how the Hebrew letters are sort of like the blueprint of life. Yeah, this one is sort of based on the album covers from the 60s and the 70s. Do you see what it says in Hebrew? Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba. It is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it. But the letters are in the gray, not the green. Eitz chaim hi. These are family trees of life, also Kabbalistic from the Lurianic tradition. But you see how I sort of weave the geometric shapes in these as well, in the Hebrew letters? So here's a map of Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation. I call this one the Sefer Yetzirah motherboard. It reminds me of the motherboard of a computer and like the electrons making those connections. And sometimes I make art just like using letters, most of the time Hebrew letters. This is the opening of the Book of Creation, Sefer Yetzirah. And here's one I did in English. I think you could think about this for a long time.
David, could you step back just for a second?
This one is from the beginning of Sefer Yetzirah 2. You can read that many, many times and still think about it more. So this one I call meditating on a burning lamp. And see how this upper part is like red for like the flame representing the soul. And then the container with liquid fuel represents the body. And then the air around the wick joins the flame with the fuel, producing light. So we saw these. I have many, many pictures based on the letter Aleph. And see here, I see it as like the yin-yang symbol, the unification of opposites.
It also looks like aerial photography. You know, those things that they have, what do you call those things that were done? Crop circles.
Crop circles?
Yeah, it looks like crop circles. Can you see that? Yeah.
Whoops. So the letter Aleph is made up of 2 yuds and a vav, but in Hebrew, yad is hand. So it's the two hands. And it's interesting here too, mem and shin. There's the open mem and then there's the closed mem, but together they make the word mem. And here too, see there's the shin with 3 heads, but on the tefillin there's also a shin with 4 heads, a mysterious. But again, that makes 3 and 4, and then 1 is 7. We saw these. Oh, so we saw the infinite 8 before, but do you see how this also hints at the letter Aleph? And here's the 5 levels of soul. Another theme is like the idea of pardes. Pardes means orchard, but it's also 4 levels. Whoops. So all the books of the written Torah is like the body of the Torah. And then the oral Torah, the Mishnah, is learned by heart. The Talmud is the mind. And then the Kabbalah is about the soul. So 4 levels. And here too, see how the rows of trees, they take you inward to the vanishing point. And this is playing with the letters of the name. Do you see how I use the, this is all sort of yuds and vavs and heys? Does everybody see that? They're very just simple, the dot and then the line, and then the hey is sort of like 2 lines and a dot. And these get into more complex meditative devices that are part of the Kabbalah. And that's it. I guess we could turn the lights on now, if somebody would please. For questions.
Do you plan what you're going to paint before you paint, or do you just intuitively paint?
Well, you could say there is a large variety of different types of motifs and styles. Some of them have to be planned, and some of them I just start and see where it takes me. I think that's an amazing part of the creative process. That for me, there's certain questions as an artist I'm always asked, and that's one of them. Another one, probably the most common thing that I'm asked is, how long does it take to make a picture? And different amounts of time. But the truth is that I don't really know, and I don't really care, because I don't watch the clock when I'm making art. And I think that creativity, the book of creation, for me, I use it sort of as a handbook for creativity. And creativity is one of those things that when I'm doing something creative, I often find that time stops. And if I'm really into it, a lot of time could have passed, but it seemed like nothing because I was so engaged in what I'm doing. For me, that happens in doing art or playing music. It could happen in listening to music or looking at art. It happens to me in nature as well. And I think that's a sign of a spiritual experience where we get a taste of something timeless.
Do you work on one painting at a time?
Mostly. Sometimes I'll work on something and then when it's drying, I'll work on something else. Sometimes if I feel stuck with a painting, I'll put it away and then pull it out at a later time and add more to it. And sometimes it's possible also to kill a painting by overworking it. And then I throw it away.
I'll just check with you. What medium do you use? Is it oil paint or something that actually looks like lithographs?
It's not oil. It's water-based paint. A lot of the earlier ones were watercolor and pen and ink. More recently, I've been using acrylic, but I tend to water it down and most of them are acrylic on paper. And some of them were I photographed from prints rather than the originals.
I have a question. I saw a reoccurring theme in different styles, but it was like the same thing. You had balance between the red and the blue and something in the middle. What are you thinking when you keep going back to that theme? Is there something to do with Kabbalah, or why did you
A lot of it is based on the letter Aleph.
That's Aleph, is it?
Aleph, because it has to do with the unification of opposites. So it's like the heaven and the earth, or the spiritual and the physical.
Yeah.
But then, like the diagonal Vav, in Hebrew, Vav means and. And it's like the idea that there is a connection between the two. That the whole thing of the Kabbalah, the tree of life, also is that there are links that connects the physical to the spiritual and the infinite. And I think that's a big part of the tradition, is that not to look at that there's an impossible, unpassable chasm between the physical and the spiritual. It's all one continuous thing. And the spiritual is not far away from us and far away from the body. It's all connected. It's all one. So Aleph being one represents that as well. So
I'm sorry to do this, but unfortunately, I know we could talk for a lot longer, but we have to finish. So thank you so much, David,
for coming to speak to us and share your ideas. As someone who's extremely mathematically challenged, I can see that my maths teacher needed a lot more Kabbalah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.